Ellie is not immune at all. She has actually promoted the mutation. We've all been through the COVID-19 pandemic, and you should know about the existence of asymptomatic carriers. That's exactly the situation with Ellie. She had been bitten once before, and that's why others thought she was immune. However, in the first season, there was a deaf mute. After he was unfortunately bitten, Ellie tried to save him with her own blood, but it didn't work. This is the best evidence, because not only was her blood useless, but it was even extremely harmful. Since she had been bitten, there must be an infectious source in her body, and in the second season, we saw her get bitten again, and the attacker was an graded infected person. So the toxicity of Ellie's blood has become even stronger. She let her own blood flow into the sewer. Think about it. You should know that there are full of spores in the sewer, and these are cordyceps. Ellie's blood can't even inhibit the growth of the spores, and it even makes them grow more wildly. The infected people that Abby met in the snow are the best proof. They were already dead. In such a low temperature, they were suddenly activated, and it's all thanks to Ellie's blood. You might not think of how they came into contact with Ellie's blood. It's through induction. It's just like having a positioning system installed on you. They can completely sense from thousands of miles away that the spores have become much stronger, so that they have also evolved. Ellie's blood has upgraded them, and she has pushed everything forward. The bread is definitely the culprit for the first infection. We all know that Joel survived safely until the second season, when the infection broke out suddenly. His neighbors were unfortunately infected, and it was all because they ate the bread. To be more precise, it was the flour that caused it.
Here, y'all want some biscuits?
That's right, the old granny was eating cookies. In this shot, the dog was staring at the old granny, and at this moment, you should have known that something was going to go wrong. Everything has its clues. For example, when Joel's daughter was in class, her classmate had already started to have shaky hands. These were all signs of an impending mutation. The source of the infection in this town was in the bread they usually ate. That's why Joel wasn't infected, because he completely forgot about his birthday cake. And at the beginning, they didn't have flour, so they couldn't make the cake. When he came home very late at night, even though the cake was made, he didn't eat anything. He even refused his neighbor's cookies when he went out.
But I'm on Atkins.
The food is the only reason that put the whole town in crisis. You might say that if there was something wrong with the flour, then in the second season, Tina once gave Ellie bread. Even if Ellie is immune, why wasn't Tina affected? Because I'm only referring to the town where Joel's home is located. Jackson Town must be very safe. It's worth mentioning that they have another danger. There are spores growing in the water pipes. All members of the Scars are immune. That's why Isaac killed them all. It must be explained that Isaac is a member of the WLF. Although the Fireflies organization has been destroyed, the WLF is a branch of the Fireflies and should protect the immune people. However, Isaac killed them. That's the purpose of the beginning of the fourth episode. We know that Isaac used to be part of Fedra, but then betrayed it and defected to the WLF. He is a ruthless person. In order to establish a new order, he had to sacrifice those immune people so as to maintain his rule in the apocalyptic context. If everyone were cured, there would no longer be an apocalypse. Isaac would no longer be the ruler. The most distinctive feature of the Scars is the scar on their faces. They are already different from ordinary people. The skin under the scars can block the fungal infection. That's why even the children have scars on their faces. In fact, they have turned themselves into immune people. There is also a possibility that the WLF simply didn't know that all the Scars members were immune, and their feud was just due to past grudges. It is said that the prophet they believed in was killed by the WLF, which is why they brutally killed the members of the WLF, the scene that Ellie saw in the fourth episode. This might also be the reason why Isaac has been relentlessly asking about the whereabouts of the Scars members. No matter what the reason is, he wants to wipe them out completely. The Scars were by no means killed by the WLF. I must talk about this group who were ambushed in The Last of Us. The Scars believe in the prophet. Their immunity to the infected makes them believe in the divinity of the prophet. They use whistles to communicate messages. That's why most people think they must have been killed by the WLF, but in fact, that's not the case. We saw the marching army at the end of the episode.
A lot of different calibers. I don't think this is Fedra.
This is FEDRA, a brutal organization that forces survivors to submit, and their rival organizations are precisely the WLF and the Fireflies. That's why none of the Scars survived, because they were fought over by these two organizations. The WLF regarded them as subjects for immunity experiments, while Fedra wanted to establish a new order and make them submit. That's why there are bullets of different calibers on the ground, because they came from the confrontation between the WLF and Fedra. The WLF wouldn't kill the hard-won immune people, so it was all done by Fedra. They would get rid of those who didn't obey, just like Joel's daughter in the first season. The ones who killed her were from FEDRA, because it's an organization composed of the remaining military and police forces. You might ask, why wasn't it a confrontation between the WLF and the Scars? Because the Scars refused to use modern weapons. They were more accustomed to using bows and arrows, some more primitive weapons. I was watching The Last of Us. There's a theory that dogs will save all of humanity because they can't be infected. During the battle in the snow, they sent out the dogs, and not a single one of them got injured. This is because the fungus can only parasitize in primates, which also explains why the giraffes are still living normally. In fact, I don't agree with this theory because I saw an infected bear on the patrol route of Ellie and the others.
Barbecue.
How can this be explained? Bears aren't primates either. From a scientific perspective, the possibility of fungal infection actually exists in any animal. If you've ever had a cat, you know that ringworm in cats is also a type of fungal infection. Of course, the setting in the show is even more powerful. powerful, as they are infected by a more powerful fungus.
One gene mutates, and in Ascomycetia, Candida, ergot, Cordyceps, Aspergillus, any one of them could become capable of burrowing into our brains and taking control, not of millions of us.
The world is already in such a situation.
Ini Ophiocordyceps. Cordyceps tidak bisa bertahan pada manusia.
The female scientist witnessed with her own eyes the cordyceps fungus parasitizing in the human body. The best explanation is that dogs aren't the targets of the fungus. You have to know that bears are wild carnivorous animals, and it's very likely that they got infected because they ate the corpses of the infected. But the dogs on the battlefield clearly look well trained. As domesticated dogs, they naturally don't need to eat carrion, and thus won't get infected. This is the only reason. Can cordyceps infect humans in reality? In The Last of Us, cordyceps is powerful enough to mutate humans. So, will we encounter such a problem in the real world soon? To be honest, cordyceps fungi do exist, but they are different from what we see in the TV series. These fungi mainly target insects. I must remind you,
There's a fungus that infects insects, gets inside an ant, for example, travels through its circulatory system to the ant's brain, and then fungus starts to direct the ant's behavior, telling it where to go, what to do.
this process is crazy, but we are different from ants. Humans are not yet at risk. Our immune system is stronger than that of insects. Our body temperature is also higher, which makes it difficult for fungi to survive. However, the scientist in the first episode said that fungi can survive in high temperatures. I must tell you that this is wrong. Most fungi have a thermal barrier, and they grow better in a colder environment, just like the situation of this water pipe in snowy weather. Moreover, it is also unscientific that the fungi grow inside humans in the TV series. There are too many types of fungi, but I promise that cordyceps fungi will not pose a threat to us. As for other fungi, it's hard to say. They can make us sick. If you know that having athlete's foot is also a fungal infection, and the ringworm on pets is also caused by fungi, it has to be said that fungi are microorganisms, and they can also evolve. I don't want a day to come when they can survive at human body temperature. They shouldn't work so hard, because humans will always find a way to deal with all this. The psychiatrist has always wanted to kill Ellie. She belongs to the Fireflies organization. Everyone tried to persuade Ellie not to go for revenge, and even Joel's younger brother Tommy didn't want to seek revenge either. However, the psychiatrist's attitude was one of support.
He's a liar. Some people just can't be saved.
She couldn't show her true intentions. In fact, she was desperately hoping that Ellie would go for revenge. A little girl setting out on her own would face unthinkable consequences, and that's exactly what she wanted to see. The Fireflies organization could get Ellie back and use her to obtain the antibody. With her identity, she was in the best position to dissuade others, but she didn't do that. She hated Joel, and at the same time, she thought that Ellie was the same kind of person as Joel, so she also hated Ellie.
I think they were walking side by side from the very start.
The pain of losing her husband, Eugene, made her drink heavily every day. It's hard for someone like her to let go of her hatred. Moreover, since Eugene was a former member of the Fireflies organization, there's a high possibility that the psychiatrist is also a member of the Fireflies organization. She was actually well aware of the incident where Joel massacred everyone in the hospital.
He said, I saved her.
So it's understandable that with old grudges and new hatreds, she harbors hatred towards Ellie. The best explanation is that she also comes from the Fireflies organization.